Ohio, a key swing state that has chosen the winning presidential candidate in every election for the past 50 years. In Cleveland, host of the 2016 Republican National Convention, debates about Arab Americans are taking center stage.
We must immediately suspend immigration from any nation that has been compromised by terrorism. We don't want them in our country.
The Republican Party has become the political epicenter of Islamophobia in this year's election.
In the state of Ohio, like in other parts of the country, hate crimes against Muslims have risen sharply in recent years.
3 female Muslim women to be attacked.
Foreign businessman in Ohio wearing a traditional robe and headscarf falsely accused of being a terrorist.
Ohio Governor John Kasich has called for a moratorium on the resettlement of Syrian refugees.
Should anybody come in here before the end of the year? The answer to that should be no.
We've come here to see if Islamophobia is motivating greater political engagement from this city's Arab American community.
We're just going to have to tie it in a soft knot.
Okay. Sarah Mohammed gave me a tour of the Islamic Center of Cleveland, the largest mosque in Ohio.
It's kind of a home away from home, really. It's a place where anyone's welcome.
A lot of individuals who have never met Muslims have the perspective on Muslims based on the media. People from the Middle East are always looked upon as barbaric and psychotic and, full of violence and rage and hate. And that's not who we are. But it wasn't until the political candidates started insulting and degrading Muslims where I felt like I needed to get involved and have our voices heard and show them this is not something that's okay.
Sarah was born and raised in Cleveland. She's a senior studying Arabic and biology at Cleveland State University. As president of the Muslim Students Association, Sarah hosts fundraisers for Syrian refugees and events like Hijab Day, where non-Muslim women wear a headscarf for a day.
It's really an experience to give women to understand, okay, this is the life of a Muslim woman, putting yourself in her shoes and experiencing how people deal with her and how people look at her.
Where did that come from, that desire to be politically engaged in opening Islam up to others?
So when I was in high school, I did a whole bunch of different activities. I played a lot of sports. I was running on a street not too far from here, and I remember someone slowing down their car, and they were shouting something, and I had my earphones in. I'm just like, what? So I took them off, and he said, go back to your country. Go back to where you were born. And he was like, F you, and he was flicking me off.
And you're born and raised in Cleveland?
Born and raised in Cleveland.
Islam is the fastest growing religion in the U.S. today, but most Arab Americans are actually Christian, not Muslim.
This is the Justice Center.
And you're like, yeah, this is where you want to be.
This is where I want to be. This is where I will be.
Sherry Midday is the only Arab American running for office this year in the state of Ohio. A lawyer since 2001, she wants to become a judge in the county's Common Pleas Court. Sherry is a Christian, born in Cleveland.
It didn't feel very different growing up. We lived in a community that we felt welcome. Post 9/11, it's more of a prejudice, a fear, discrimination. I'm associated with being Arab, an Arab American, and that has a very negative connotation today.
But it didn't used to.
I've never felt it before. Until I put myself on the public stage, I've never felt that bigotry.
This is Sherry's second time campaigning for a judgeship. Even though she's not Muslim, she's experienced Islamophobia because of her Egyptian heritage.
I ran in 2014, and the attacks were vicious, and they were hurtful. And I didn't know how to process them. I really didn't, because I never felt it before.
Can you take me back to when you say you didn't know how to process these attacks? Like, what were those emotions like?
The first time I knew that rumors were being pushed, I was at a forum at a nursing home. And I introduced myself to an elderly woman, and she said, is it true, the rumors that I'm hearing? And I said, what rumors? And she said that you plan to bring Sharia law into our justice system. And I didn't know how to answer her. You know, I literally took a step back because I said, are you kidding me?
What else was being said about you?
I was referred to as an Arab terrorist. It took the breath out of me. And I sat in my car and I cried. And it's bringing those feelings back now, thinking about how I felt that day. And when I got over the tears, I thought, I have to do something about this. You combat this racism by winning.
Some tables for the voter registration.
Julia Shearson is the executive director of the Cleveland chapter of the Council on American-Islamic Relations, or CAIR, the nation's largest Muslim civil rights organization.
Can you fill it now? It's most important to fill it now, yeah.
Julia grew up in a Catholic family that traces its roots to the Mayflower. She converted to Islam in 2002 after studying the religion at Harvard University.
The minute I put on my scarf and professed that I believed in Islam, I really started to understand what it was like to be treated like a second-class citizen. It was quite a shock, to go from being a person of privilege, European American, to becoming basically a suspect in my own land.
What does that look like, kind of on a daily?
I was driving and somebody came speeding past me, mouthing all these profanities and just screaming at me. It wasn't my driving. I'm a very good driver. It was about, my scarf. I mean, it was very clear. But what really concerns me more are the kind of systemic policies and procedures, things like discrimination when it comes to banking or employment discrimination. There's been targeting of Arab American mom and pop shops. There have been charities closed down. Students have had their visas stripped. There's a constant FBI questioning, grossly discriminatory treatment that our community has been put under.
Has that translated into political engagement?
People are more engaged, particularly in this election. They are starting to register to vote. Our registration, that's picking up.
CAIR is part of a national campaign to register 1 million voters before Election Day.
Okay, brother. You want to sign against Islamophobia?
Yes.
Jazakallah khair. Thank you very much. You can use the table over there. It's important to encourage and to help the Muslim community and Arab community get to know what their rights are. And one of them is really to register to vote. I took an oath to myself to make sure that I register as many Muslims and Arabs as I can.
Immigration from the Middle East to the U.S. began in the 1880s. An estimated 3.6 million Americans now trace their roots to an Arab country. The community in Ohio is the 8th largest in the U.S. and has more than doubled in the past 35 years. Over 25,000 are estimated to live in the Cleveland metropolitan area. But precise numbers are hard to come by because the census classifies Arab Americans as white.
I became a U.S. citizen back in 1985, and I voted in every election. Most of the time I am independent. First of all, I want to guarantee that Mr. Trump, he will not be president. I'm afraid one day they are going to knock on my door, take me, my wife, put me in concentration camps, like they have the Japanese here. And it can happen. Anything can happen.
In 2000, Arab Americans voted overwhelmingly for George W. Bush. But following 9/11, the Patriot Act, and the invasions of Afghanistan and Iraq, there was a major shift. Today, almost twice as many Arab Americans identify as Democrats than as Republicans.
After 9/11, would you say that, in broad strokes, the Arab American, Muslim American population turned away from the Republican Party?
Well, I would say that they fled to the exits as fast as they could. I mean, they fled in droves. But in the post-9/11 world, we're somewhat, I would say, radioactive to political leaders.
Do you think that the Muslim American community of Ohio, do you think they feel politically powerful?
Unfortunately, I don't